Hey guys, it's November 1st, and by YouTube law, I have to do a Halloween video, so let's talk about the Castlevania Netflix series. Season 2 of Castlevania was released a few days ago, so it made sense for me to look at the show for my requisite spooky video. If you're not familiar with this show, it's an animated series based on the Castlevania games, and more specifically, Castlevania 3: Dracula's Curse. That was one of the few NES games we owned growing up, and that alone got me really interested in the show. The series is written by comic book writer Warren Ellis, whose work I don't really know that well, and who worked closely with Konami and Castlevania producer Koji Igarashi to do the property justice in animated form. It was originally going to be released as a trilogy of direct-to-DVD movies back in 2008, but for whatever reason, the project ended up in development hell until it resurfaced about a decade later as a Netflix series, with the first season releasing last year. I enjoyed the first season, but I had a couple of issues that I hoped would be smoothed out in Season 2. Does Season 2 fix these problems? Well, not really, no, but it is still a solid season that shows a lot of promise for the future of the series. This review is going to be mostly spoiler-free, but I will talk about a few particular characters and scenes, so if you haven't watched the series yet, you may not want to watch this video. First, the plot. Castlevania is a loose adaptation of the story of Castlevania 3, though the show takes some inspiration from other games in the series in terms of characters and design. The story revolves around the vampire Dracula, who is angry with humanity for burning his human wife at the stake and seeks his revenge by sending out his creatures every night to kill innocent people. Naturally, everyone wants him to cut that out, so a group of heroes sets out to stop Dracula and his army from destroying humanity. That group consists of Trevor Belmont, the last son of a family of monster hunters, Sypha Belnades, a sorceress who belongs to a clan known as the Speakers, and Alucard, the half-vampire son of Dracula rebelling against his father. If you Castlevania 3 fans are wondering where Grant is, he's living in a castle upstate. That's basically the plot in a nutshell. It doesn't get more complicated than Dracula is evil, these three must stop him, which for a Castlevania series I think works alright. Sometimes though, I feel like the writing is trying too hard to be grand and epic, and not really succeeding. A lot of moments that should have a great impact instead just have a decent impact, if you know what I mean. Where the writing really shines is in the main characters and the dialogue. Trevor is a fantastic protagonist. He's snarky and kind of a jerk, but he's a good fighter and knows when to take things seriously. Sypha is even better. I love how she doesn't take any of Trevor or Alucard's crap, and I like seeing her use her magical abilities. She's probably my favorite character in the show. Alucard isn't bad in this series, but I really wanted them to explore his relationship to Dracula more. He's fighting against his father, after all, and we do get some exploration of that in the last few episodes, but I wanted more of that to really show off Alucard's character. Honestly, for a Castlevania series, I wasn't expecting to laugh as much as I did at the banter between these characters, but they play off each other really well. There's a lot of great chemistry between them that makes them entertaining to watch, which makes me wish they weren't stuck in a library for half of the second season. Unfortunately, the show's villains are not nearly as interesting. This is especially true of Dracula himself. My biggest problem with Season 1 was that we barely saw Dracula, and while we see plenty of him in Season 2, he kinda sucks. Mainly because he doesn't do anything, just sitting in his chair, obviously not caring about the war he claims to be leading. And the problem is, when it comes time to actually fight Dracula and he shows off his incredible powers, it doesn't feel earned because there wasn't enough build-up to it. There's a flashback scene that shows Dracula slaughtering the men of a town that is amazing to watch. The mood is perfect and the violence shows us how ruthless Dracula can be. We needed more of that and less of Dracula slouched in his chair being grumpy. Besides Dracula, the other villains are barely worth mentioning. Hector and Isaac are just kinda bland, Carmilla is the typical manipulative seductress, an archetype I don't really like, and Godbrand is almost insufferably one note. The writing does somewhat make up for the uninteresting villains, as does the voice acting, which on the whole isn't too bad. Richard Armitage is perfect as Trevor, and while I don't like what they did with his character, Graham McTavish's voice for Dracula is outstanding. But let's talk about the animation. This is an animated series after all, and the animation is important in judging it, and on that note, I'm not very impressed. Character expressions get pretty weird sometimes, and everything just looks so stiff, which isn't as bad during the slower, talkative moments, but becomes really noticeable during the action scenes. It's a shame because the fights are choreographed fairly well, but it isn't as flashy or as eye-catching as it should be because of the animation quality. The background animation is nice though, and the anime-influenced art style fits really well with the series. I just find the movements distracting. I know animation is incredibly hard and time-consuming, and I respect the animators for doing their best. I just think the end result could have looked better. Also, the pacing in this show is weird. It somehow feels slow and not slow at the same time. There's plenty of action in the series, but sometimes getting there takes too long. I think the problem is that the script wasn't fully transitioned from a trilogy of movies to a 12-episode series. It often feels like a film carelessly cut up into smaller parts. It doesn't ruin the show for me, but I know it's going to be a problem for some people. Something else that might be a problem for people is the show's heavy use of graphic violence. Now let me just say that I have no problem with violence in media, and if it's called for, I can accept ultra-violent imagery, and yeah, the Castlevania series does lend itself to plenty of blood and gore. My issue is that they often focus on the violence for seemingly no reason. There's plenty of decapitations, disembowelings, and bodies being ripped apart here, and let's be honest, it's going to turn some people away. Some of you might say that the heavy violence shows how terrible life is with Dracula in command, but I would argue that we understand that fairly quickly, and we don't need to be reminded of it every couple of minutes. How about less focus on shocking us with graphic murder and more focus on fleshing out the villain of the story so we believe he's really as evil as the violence implies? And here's another issue I have that might cause some controversy: the music, composed by Trevor Morris. Now, I think the music itself is absolutely fine. It suits the tone that each scene wants to evoke, except for that bar fight. I have no idea what the hell is up with that song. But my question is, where are all the classic Castlevania tunes? I don't mean to demean Trevor Morris and his work, but if you're gonna license the Castlevania name, you might as well go the extra mile and remix some of the music. In fact, when they do finally play an orchestral version of Bloody Tears during a fight scene in the second to last episode, it's incredible, especially for Castlevania fans. Again, the soundtrack is alright, and I get that they wanted to do their own thing, but it's something I think fans would have appreciated more if it paid more homage to the games. So overall, the Castlevania Netflix series is good, but not great, and I think it has the potential to be great if it irons out some of the kinks. A third season has been greenlit, so it's only a matter of time before the story continues. I hope that they smooth out the issues and keep to their strengths, because as far as video game adaptations to TV and movies go, Castlevania is pretty damn good. I definitely recommend it for fans of the series, though if you are one, you've probably already seen it by this point. As for people who aren't into Castlevania, it really depends on your tastes. If you like dark, gritty fantasy or stories about vampires, you'll more than likely find something to enjoy, but otherwise, it might not be for you. It's streaming on Netflix right now, and I assume most of you have Netflix subscriptions, so check it out if you're interested. Happy November 1st, everybody, and I'll see you all later.